Hello and welcome to the Positive Future for Health podcast. I'm your host, Althea Finch. I'm the creator of the Pain Free Method. How to be pain free by tuning into you. And you can find out more about that at painfreedom.co.uk. And as well as teaching people how to be pain free with my methods, I started this podcast because I felt that gap between I can't tell you things that Andrew knows and other special guests. So I felt that gap and wanted to fill that gap. I invite natural health experts and positive thinkers for the future, like Andrew, to share their wisdom, to motivate us, everybody, and to what to aspire to, I guess, and inspire us and encourage all of us in many ways. So on tonight's podcast, we have special guest Andrew Bridgen, and I'm thrilled that he's coming. He's come on the podcast because I think he's a real man, and as men, aren't they supposed to be like you, Andrew? I think standing up for what's right, standing up for the underdog and people who are being unfairly treated, for example. And you've exposed the most amazing, extraordinary um, things that different things that we're going to talk about. And stood your ground. I mean, this has not been a small, a narrow a path. You've lost your wife, your business, your MP position, your house, and it's all this manipulation, all sorts of shenanigans going on. I came across you in the COVID show in the beginning of that, and I saw the age coming down and down and down for the jabs, and I was around my school protesting and trying to wake people up, and it wasn't easy, as many of us know. And I was praying for some professionals to come out, like yourself, Andrew, like MPs and professionals, doctors, nurses, and people that knew what was going on to stand up. And there were very, very few. And I watched your journey, Andrew, and I was so grateful. I was just like, finally someone with some bottle to say what's going on. And I saw you in many of your speeches, and I was there for pretty much all of them, I think, about the lowering age consent for the jabs, and then all the excess deaths, and then some. And I watched that journey and just was applauding you for my little bit, coming to a lot of marches and things. And I actually met you. I met you in marches before, but I'm sure he's met thousands of people. But I met you recently at the wonderful Hope in Sussex, which is run by Katie Joe and Sadie Frost, a wonderful couple of girls who are doing amazing things there. And you gave the most incredible emotive speech. And I don't think there was a dry eye in the house. And when I said to people that I'm having you on the podcast, lots of people, different people was like, oh yeah, that bridge, and yeah, what do they call people? Um, like you know, I can't remember the word. They're like not real, they're fakes, and they're controlled opposition, all this sort of thing. But you know what? I follow my heart, and I listened to your speech, and I met you, and I thought, I don't feel it. I think that you're the real deal. That's my opinion, and that's why I invited you here. And I'm so pleased you did, Andrew. So, Andrew, how has it been for you? How do you have the bottle to stand your ground uh, uh, in great opposition and great loss on your part? How do you do it?
Can you see me? Because I've lost you on my
Yeah,
screen.
yeah, see you
You can see
perfectly.
me. That's fine.
Yeah.
Um, how do I do it? I think looking back, I think the whole of my life was to get me to the position where I was determined to stand up and stand in the truth, and I had the confidence to do it alone. Um, I look back on my life and I look about the things that have happened to me, and they were training for that moment, and everything that led up to that, and I felt it was the most important thing in the world. Um, I didn't myself didn't have it wasn't a really happy childhood, and as a result of that, I really rail at anybody doing anything bad to children or harming children.
That's
It's
time
just
to
something
go.
that's inside me. Um, I, I mean, why did I just decide because I felt interested in. There were subjects that interested me, so I went to university. I was the first member of my family ever to go to university. Back in '83, I went to Nottingham University, and just because I was interested in it, I did biological sciences, specialising in genetics, virology, and behaviour, which couldn't have been more apt for the situation we found ourselves in.
Absolutely.
Um, I was briefly an officer in the Royal Marine Commandos. That training is rigorous. I've been in business and I had run a very, very successful business from a startup, from a £1,000 startup to a 30 million turnover business in 22 years. Um,
Wow.
I was voted Young Executive of the Year UK when I was young in 2000. I'd been
Amazing.
chairman of the Institute of Directors for the East Midlands. I'd met politicians during Tony Blair's time. I found them to be completely inept. Um, and when I then got involved in politics a bit, I was determined that we should not be joining the euro. So I got involved in business for Sterling and the No campaign in the late 90s, and we were successful in keeping the UK out of the euro. Um, and in 2005, after the Labour Party got back in again, I managed to rally a number of friends and small and medium-sized business operators. Said, let's just take over the local Conservative Association, which was fairly moribund, and take over North West Leicestershire. We stood as Conservatives. Um, I think the Labour Party had control of North West Leicestershire at a district council level, basically since 1983 when it was formed, and it wasn't that complicated. I looked at the politicians I'd met and I thought, well, if these people can do it, I mean, they didn't seem that bright. I thought it can't be that much to any of this politics business. It's all about people anyway, and it was the area that where the people I went to school with were. I was knocking on the doors of my old headmaster, um, and it was pretty dire. Northwest Leicestershire was the poor relation of Leicestershire. It was considered the poorest seat. It had Colville in it, was its major conurbation, which is suppose was at the time the most deprived town in Leicestershire. And there was a general air of doom and gloom around the place, and I didn't think it was warranted. So I'd been very successful in business, so I decided we were going to take over. So I said to my friends, you stand for the council, I'll put the money up for all the leaflets and we'll take control of the council. Then I'll stand for MP and we'll get the area sorted. And basically, my friends all agreed and we did it. We took control of the council in 2007 with the biggest swing in the country against the Labour Party. Um, and I got in as the MP in 2010. I didn't come through the party system. It was considered a no hope seat for the Conservatives, so they never sent us any money, but it didn't matter. I got my own money, and I was actually selected as the candidate for the Conservative Party by open primary because the association had so few members. They actually just put coupons and let the public vote from the local newspapers. Um,
Wow.
and
Crazy, isn't it?
so, I mean, nobody really wanted to be the candidate for North West Leicestershire. It was considered a safe Labour seat, unwinnable. I think there were 13 people applied to be the candidate. Next door in Charnwood, which is considered a safe Conservative seat, there were over 200 people wanted to be the candidate there. So the competition wasn't harsh, um, and I just went around and knocked on doors, and had 4 years before the election. We'd won for the council and we started making changes straight away. Um, and the rest is history. I was gutted. I only got the second biggest swing in the country against the Labour Party in the 2010 elections, but that was enough. 4,500 Labour to 7,500 Conservative majority in one jump, and
Wow.
I was never in with the party elite. David Cameron had told me in 2008 when he was leader of the opposition, and I was just a candidate in North West Leicestershire. He told me that my seat was a dump and it wouldn't vote Conservative. So I told him we didn't want him, we didn't need him in North West Leicestershire, and I would win, um, and I did. And
And you did some great things in that area.
it took, well, in 12 years, we moved the poorest constituency in Leicestershire to the richest, and it wasn't a full-time job. We delivered the highest
Wow.
economic growth in the country consistently, built some good quality housing, and developed the policy which I gave to the government 10 years ago. They implemented only a few years ago, and Labour have turned it over. Now, the Building Beautiful um, policy they brought in for housing, we'd been doing it since we got in basically 2007 at the council here. So, and we won a lot of awards. And because we had
Amazing.
high economic growth, we had lots of retained business rates. We got to the position where there's 1.2 jobs in the constituency for everyone of working age. So a lot of people have to travel here to work, which keeps the wages up. So now we're the only part of Leicestershire that has above UK average household incomes. And because we built enough good quality housing, the house prices are still 30% lower than the UK average. So that's the
Wow.
sweet spot. So you've got higher than UK average wages, lower than UK average housing costs, and people said they wanted to, you want to make the people happy. Well, happiness for most people is being able to have a job that pays decent wages locally so they can buy a house, pay the bills, go out on a Saturday night and have a couple of weeks on holiday, hopefully from East Midlands
That's it.
Airport, which is also in the constituency of North West Leicestershire. And that's why in the run up to the 2019 election, North West Leicestershire was in a government survey was the happiest place to live in the Midlands. And I wasn't
Wow.
surprised then that that unwinnable seat by 2019, 63% of all the votes came to me out of six candidates. And a 20,400 majority, which was actually a lot bigger than David Cameron ever had in Witney in the Cotswolds. And he'd said that my area was a dump. So it just shows you how bad his area must have been. Um, and yeah, I was returned at five general elections where I was returned with a bigger majority every single time, despite the best efforts of some of our prime ministers. I'd led Brexit for the East Midlands. I led the whole campaign for the East Midlands, and we voted 59-41 in the East Midlands to leave. My own seat of North West Leicestershire voted 61% to leave, and they voted against the Conservative Party, Labour Party, Lib Dems because they were all Remain. They voted with me to leave, and that was absolutely amazing. It's a shame that they never let us really leave or have the good parts of Brexit. We only ever had the bad parts of Brexit because the establishment never wanted us to leave and never respected the wishes of the people. And of course, 6 weeks um, after the election in 2019, the madness of COVID-19 started. I've always been a bit of a rebel, and that's probably putting it mildly.
No.
I was the MP who started and uncovered the Horizon Post Office scandal, which started very soon after I got in 2010. Michael and Susan Rudkin, unfortunately for the government, were my constituents, and Michael Rudkin and his wife were wrongly convicted. In fact, they were fitted up because Michael was the chair of the Post Office Federation, Sub Postmasters Federation, and he was the one in 2008 that was accidentally shown Fujitsu's headquarters where they were altering all the accounts remotely without the knowledge of the sub postmasters.
Mm.
And when he got home, they put a £40,000 loss on his wife's computer, and they prosecuted her and criminally convicted her of fraud when she was completely innocent.
It's
Uh,
disgusting.
I
Yeah.
got that overturned in her conviction was overturned in December 2020, one of the first nine of the thousand. They still haven't got their compensation, of course, because the government will never pay compensation out. They'll wait for them to die and then just give a small amount of money to their relatives. Same with the infected blood scandal. I also exposed the modern slavery in the fast fashion industry in Leicester, which thousands and thousands of people were getting paid £2.50 and £3 an hour in 2019, working in sweatshops. A lot of them were legal migrants being exploited. basically modern slavery. I also opposed HS2 for 10 years and said it was always going to be a disaster, over budget, and get cancelled. And
And tell us
that's
about
what
the
happened.
HS2. Tell us about the HS2. I mean, my son, he's in cadets at, so we're in South London here, and he's in cadets and loves it and all that. But the cadets their captain, they put this thing out, said, oh, would the cadets like to come to this major industrial activity going on with, and I looked at it. It was like the biggest one in the biggest activity in England, industrial activity, whatever. And I looked at it, I thought that's HS2. And I remember you saying they haven't laid a single piece of line of the HS2. I
They
thought,
haven't. They haven't
they,
they haven't laid one single yard of track yet.
not
Um,
once. But the thing is I feel like, Andrew, we're living this sort of
but they are
BBC.
they're the highest paid civil service jobs in the government, and they've never laid a yard of track. They can't even get it into Euston, so it can't go to London. It doesn't go into New Street in Birmingham. That's all it is now. It's London to Birmingham, but it doesn't go to London. It's going to go to Old Oak Common, and it's going to go to the NEC and Birmingham Airport, which isn't central Birmingham. So what I fear you'll have to do is you'll have to get on a train to get to Old Oak Common from London, and then you'll have to get a train from the NEC to get into New Street. And by the time you've done all that, it'll be slower than if you'd gone on the conventional rail from Euston to Birmingham New Street.
But is
Because
this just the
actually what you'll be doing is you'll be going very fast from nearly London to nearly Birmingham, and nobody wants to go from nearly London to nearly Birmingham, as far as I know,
they're
um,
not?
at
So
very
is it
high
just a big,
speed.
and is it just a big sort of
It's a huge, it's a
money
huge. Well, it's
money
not even that.
launderer?
It's actually a land grab. Um,
Because they
they've
did it to your house, isn't it? You lost
Yep,
your beautiful house. Could you
yep,
share a little bit that
yeah.
sneaky little
Well, what
movie?
I they put the I'm the only MP had to sell his house or any property to HS2 mysteriously, and I'd opposed it from the very before they even announced the route, and then they put the route. It was actually through the front of my um, Victorian, my Georgian rectory in 14 acres of gardens and a listed building, and a whistleblower from inside HS2 told me sometime after, and they bought it off me for £500,000 less than it was worth, and £360,000 less than I'd paid for it 5 years before. And then they took the price I'd paid off the land registry, and to try and get rid of me in 2015 at that election, they put a smear story out saying that I'd made a lot of money selling, and it's actually was in the papers saying I'd made a lot of money when I'd actually they'd given me 360,000 less than I'd spent money on it. I'd put the
Yeah.
stable block in and bits and bobs. That was just a complete smear. They did that on purpose. And to
And
add
where did the
insult
house?
to add insult to injury, um, 7 years after they'd robbed the house off me, um, my eldest son, who was 15 when we left, rang me from America where he was working and said he couldn't, his credit rating was shot to pieces. And I said, "Why is that, Alex?" And he said, "Well, someone's put unpaid gas bills from 20, but bear in mind, they bought the house off me in 2015. Um, in 20 from gas bills from 2020, 2021, 2022 for the old rectory. And I got to the bottom of it, and HS2 had basically told British Gas to put the bills onto me, and then British Gas had made a mistake. And obviously, I mean, it's like, why would they want to put the bills onto my credit rating 7 years after they bought it, and I didn't leave any bills behind for and they because my son Alexander James Bridgen has got exactly the same initials as me, they actually put it on him instead.
Oh, don't.
And
Poor
it was
you.
completely
Honestly.
spure. That was they meant to smear me, but they smeared my eldest son instead. And I got that sorted with British Gas eventually. But I mean, it's like selling your car and then finding 7 years later you're getting speeding fines and parking fines. And British Gas maintained they'd written 36 times to HS2 to the house, uh, saying, we're billing Mr. Andrew James Bridgen for this, or they thought they were. And they didn't do
And
anything about it because it suited
did
them.
they?
And I had it out with the minister. Yeah, yeah. And what they've actually done is HS2. They've bought tens of thousands of property, land, buildings, houses all up and down the country, which now they don't need. But they bought them very cheaply because the way they buy them, you have a list of 10 valuers, and they do the whole country. And there might be names of firms you might recognise. They're all the London offices. You don't know anybody. And as someone who has to sell to HS2, you're asked to pick one of the valuers off the list and HS2 pick another one. And I worked out from the psychology of it how they got the prices very, very low. As a property owner asking for a valuation for sale for HS2, you'll probably only ever use their services once. You've already picked them off the list, so they've just got it randomly. But of course, HS2 choose someone every single time, and of course, the HS2 the budget was always under pressure, and where they could only squeeze was the prices they paid for the land and buildings they needed to acquire or had to acquire, and they were going to choose the lowest price. So the pressure on both valuers was to be the lowest, and that's just a race to the bottom, and that's how they did it. That's how they did. So you had two valuers, one HS2 chosen, one you'd chosen, and if they valued it and they were within 10% of each other, they just split the difference and said that's what they gave you. So a property that I'd paid 2.2 million for and improved, I ended up getting 1.89 million for it 5 years later.
And is it
And
destroyed
and I
now?
and I paid 110,000 stamp duty on
Yeah.
it as well. So it owed me about 2.5 million, and I got 1.89. And then they had the nerve to put a story out saying that I'd made a fortune out of selling my house to HS2. Um,
Absolutely.
that's
And it's, I think,
what a rough game, what a rough trade politics is. Um, so mm, I don't know what they're doing, but they're probably going to stick the illegal migrants in a lot of the houses now. That's what I think.
because the houses are not destroyed, they're
No, no,
still.
no. Well, they're not going to build it, are they? It's only going to Birmingham. They've bought houses all the way up to Sheffield, Leeds. They've bought lots and lots of houses and land, but they bought them very, very cheap. They also stockpiled building materials, which they now don't need, and I don't doubt those will be sold off to somebody at a massive discount. Because most
I was
building
just
projects,
saying,
all you do is you build and you have your materials delivered every day, a few days, stock, and because that's the most efficient way. Well, HS2 had actually stockpiled um, building materials all over the country, ready to use, which is not the way you do it. And of course, it has to be handled twice, it gets damaged, and no doubt they will have been sold off at a huge loss, a bit like the PPE scandal around COVID-19, where they bought all this defective material, paid for it, and then stored it for a bit at huge cost, and then burnt it. Um,
millions of pounds. Wasn't it like 33 million or something like that?
It
I
was
can't
it
remember
was
it.
a lot. There was hundreds of millions of pounds worth. Some of it was out of date when they bought it. Well, I mean, what sort of a business? You don't if you quality control things that you're buying, and if it's not up to standard, you send it back and don't pay for it. You don't certainly don't pay for. But I mean, it's ludicrous. It's just it's beyond incompetent. It's fraudulent with taxpayers' money. Track and trace was another huge con.
Yeah.
I had a civil servant in track and trace, and he said that everyone's going through in 3 months. Well, when the civil service rotate people through in 3 months, it's for two reasons. Firstly, they want everyone's hands in the corruption and the fraud, and secondly, they don't want anyone there long enough to take responsibility for anything. So they were rotating civil servants through track and trace on a 3 month rotation. By the time you learnt where to hang your coat and where the coffee machine worked, you were moving. But everyone had been there. But no one was there long enough to take responsibility. And that was something like 40 odd billion, and none of it ever worked.
I
What I,
remember all that.
and
I
also
remember all
we
that.
also
Mm.
we uncovered around about 85 million pounds worth of PCR tests that were disappearing from stock, paid for by the taxpayer um, on a regular basis, on a monthly basis. And
Wow.
no one would investigate that either. That's never been resolved. Um, all the storage of all the PCR tests, everything to do with COVID was military, by the way. The vaccines were flown into military airports. That's how they avoided all the checks. Or even the PCR,
I remember all that.
even the PCR tests were kept stored at military bases.
I remember all the heavy, right in the beginning of lockdown. I remember hearing all these heavy airplanes going over. I thought, what is going on? I don't know if that's my imagination but I noticed because we were all just stuck
Well,
inside.
and the PSYOPs was a military operation as well. Quite honestly, the psychological uh, attack on the public to create the fear. Um, and I didn't suss it out straight away. If it's any mitigation to my colleagues, and they probably don't deserve any mitigation, but the public were given a lot of psychological attack, so a lot of pressure. MPs were given a lot as well. I mean, we were locked down in our houses in the country, and Parliament wasn't working; it was only working virtually, and that's not working. So it basically we had government by diktat, where even the COVID restrictions were being changed arbitrarily and then being voted on a week later after they'd already been
Yeah,
changed. I mean, that's the
yeah.
powers that the government had taken. We weren't in any sort of democracy. There was no debate about the vaccines or before they came in, and obviously, as a scientist, someone with a scientific background, I was interested. I do recall that in March 2020, I sent a paper to the government, which was sent to me by someone which I read, which showed that hydroxychloroquine had efficacy against coronavirus, and I sent it to the government and said this could be useful. We need to look at this, and I sent it to Jeremy Hunt, who who was the had been in charge of the Department of Health for 7 years, and he was actually then the chair of the Health Select Committee in 2020. And I sent it to him, and I spoke to the government and said, look, I do have some knowledge in this area, and if you want some help, I'm quite happy to help. They never asked me for any help, obviously. And I went back to Jeremy Hunt a week later and said, Jeremy, have you on the phone? I rang him and said, have you had a chance to look at that paper I sent you about hydroxychloroquine? It could be useful. And you won't believe it. He said to me, Andrew, I don't send me any scientific papers, please. He said, I don't know how to read them. And I thought, well, this guy's been running the health service for 7 years. I mean, I did say to him, what, you can't understand scientific papers? He said, no, I'm not a scientist. I said, what? And you've got no access to anyone who can explain them to you. And he put the phone down on me. And that was it.
Wow. Is the whole situation corrupt? Is the whole of yeah, yes,
Yeah.
that's a yes. Yes.
Yes. Well, when anything doesn't add up, and HS2 doesn't add up, and the fact that the the post office scandal didn't add up, and was covered up for 20 years. Well, obviously, when we started investigating what was going on with the Horizon system, we didn't realise that the government were planning to sell off the post office. You can see why that government didn't want to expose it, but it was bought in by Labour, and they knew it was faulty. They knew it was faulty when it came in. When I got to the bottom of it, Tony Blair had bought it in the late 90s. They'd spent £800 million in the late 90s on this
Wow.
software system, which was originally designed, it was supposed to be for paying benefits out through the post office, pensions, housing benefit, child benefit, all that sort of stuff. But they couldn't make it work because it got too many bugs in it, and they didn't want to write it off. So they made it into a retail package and just gave it to the sub postmasters at their risk. They knew. They knew from day one, and they watched 1,000 people go to
Same.
prison who were innocent and didn't do anything. And then
It's the
that was
same.
kept the same under the next government because they wanted to sell the post office off and Royal Mail, and in the end they couldn't sell the post office off because of all the problems. And of course they didn't tell me, but I mean, obviously they resented the fact that I was the one that started it all off and uncovered it all through my constituents' evidence, Mr. and Mrs. Rudkin, who'd been completely stitched up. Um, it's unbelievable. I mean, that was a conspiracy theory.
And
Um,
it's unbelievable, isn't it? Because that dear couple who worked hard, did they work hard for their pension and looked after their customers. I mean, they were spat at in the street, weren't they? And people thought they had stolen all their money, and they hadn't done anything of the such. And that poor couple, I mean, by the time they'd come to you, they were already convicted and done and dusted, and hoping for, I don't know, hoping for some light. Andrew, where's the hope in all this? If it's all corrupt, and it severely is, clearly.
Well,
How
I watched the way Parliament works. I was there for over 14 years, um, and there's very little of it I would keep. What I can assure you is that the system that we've got has got to change, because if you think the system we've got, which has got us into this mess, where so many things the people are told are basically completely untrue,
yeah,
being told complete untruths. Parliament is a pantomime. It is the uni party, and I'm afraid Reform are well in the uni party. They're definitely in the uni party. Parliament doesn't. I came into Parliament to serve the people I was brought up with, my home area, North West Leicestershire, and I always considered myself the servant of the people and not their master. And it doesn't feel like that now. They've even taken out, after the last election, they've even changed the job description of MPs and taken out the
my God.
requirement for them to represent the views of their constituents. So it's basically a dictatorship. Instead of having an MP to represent your views in Parliament, what you've actually got now is a member of a political party, whichever one that is, who represents that party in your constituency. That's all you've got. Um, I will tell you, I've got how bad it is now, and there's nothing I'd keep of it. We need to move to direct democracy. We need to, if it was up to me tomorrow, but I don't have the power to do it, I'd get rid of the House of Lords straight away. That's a den of cronyism where the people who've played the political game, and you only get on in politics by actually looking after the interests of your party, not looking after the interests of the people you represent. That's the fundamental problem, is that you're promoted for doing what your party wants, not what's good for. I mean, how was it that I was able to turn the poorest area in Leicestershire to the richest in 12 years? What were the other MPs doing? Well, they weren't doing what I was doing, were they? They weren't
Mm,
they weren't looking out for the best interests of their constituency, or if they were very bad at it. Um, that's and they resented what I was doing because it was making them look bad. They
mm,
resented me speaking out over the vaccines.
yeah.
And that's why they scarpered from the chamber every time. The public were very
That
interested.
was disgusting, disgusting.
And I think
Absolutely
the tin
saw
lid
all
on
that.
it was when they wanted to extend the jabs down to infants and babies.
Mm,
Um, and there's no healthy child of that age has died of COVID anywhere in the world. And I knew that by that time, I knew that at least 1 in 800 of them would die or suffer a life-changing injury if they got vaccinated. I thought it was murder. I went to my
I'm so
colleagues.
so
I went to
grateful that you're speaking, Andrew. So grateful. Standing up and the scallywags, the scum that were just walking out and telling the opposition to walk out too. What was all that about?
Well, if you weren't there, then you could pretend you didn't hear the speech. You could claim culpable deniability. But I mean, sometimes they were in the chamber and they were just heckling me. I mean, it was almost demonic, the noises they were making. Um, but and I lost all my and for 20 months after I spoke out on the 13th of December 2022, I actually stopped the government on my own from jabbing the babies. They couldn't
No,
authorize
that
it
was
after that
amazing.
speech.
I was so
Um,
grateful. You did it. And that happened. I think what was that? Were they shown up and they realized
Well, it's like a court of law, you see, it was all on the record. And we have a rule, and people say, well, yeah, but you're a conspiracy theorist, you're talking rubbish. Well, there's a rule in Parliament that any other member can challenge anything you've said. They don't have to be in the chamber. They just write to the speaker and say, when they see the Hansard report, they can say, well, that what he said there is not true. And then if they can justify that, they can drag you back to the chamber the next day to put the record straight. All those speeches I gave about asking questions about the vaccines and questioning their efficacy and safety and the excess deaths, I was never once challenged on the Hansard record and never asked to come back and put the
Mm.
record straight. That tells you that what I said was the truth.
There it is. And Peter says, we're all grateful for what you've been doing, Andrew. Peter says that. And I remember when that wasn't the big hooray in behind the bulletproof glass. Was that was talking
That
about
was later.
excess
That was
deaths.
later. That was
Mm,
later. I got the first debate in the world on excess deaths, but it took me 9 months of applying every
yeah,
week to
yeah.
get
I was
them
watching all that.
to get them to have a debate on excess deaths, and no one wanted to join me. They wouldn't
Mm,
sign my petition to get the debate. It was happening in everybody's constituency, every town, every village. There were excess deaths every week, and nobody wanted to talk about it. And I always became very suspicious of anything nobody wants to talk about because um, that tells you it's a red flag for me. Um, and science doesn't work like that. Science is about challenge, and politics shouldn't be like that. You should be able to defend your arguments. And I've become my journey. Um, I think I still am a conservative, but I mean, I think this right-left business is the illusion of choice in Parliament. It's why you can divide people. There's always so more that unites us than divides us. It isn't about right and left in politics anymore. It's about right and wrong. It's actually about good and evil, and
it,
the
it
people
is. Yeah.
who are perpetrating, I believe, have perpetrated huge crimes against humanity. um, I mean, I've met them in Parliament, and they're soulless people. I was told by a colleague I thought was a friend of mine in after I'd stopped them jabbing the babies in February 2023. He put his arm around me in the coming out of the tea room and whispered gently into my ear, "Andrew, you can speak out about the vaccines all you want to, but you're vaccinated yourself. That means you will be dead of cancer soon." He laughed and then walked off.
Lovely.
Well,
And
and
you were offered you were offered a lot of money to shut up, weren't you?
I was offered, well, I don't know about whether it was money or not. I was offered anything I wanted. I just tell them what I wanted and I could have it, apparently. So I played that back to them and said, "Well, anything I want." They said, "Well, pretty much." I said, "Is that the game we're playing?" And they said, "Yes, that's the game we're always playing." I said, "Well, in that case, that's the game we're playing. I want the Prime Minister's resignation letter, don't I?"
Yeah.
But they said, unfortunately, that was the one thing I couldn't have. So I said, "Well, I don't want anything else if that's the game we're playing. It's not the game I'm playing." Um,
And Dan, you do share that when you first joined as an MP, was it back 14 years ago then? And when you first,
Well, yes, yes. Well, it
what
was
happened?
amazing that well, I'll say the first government I was in was the coalition in 2010, 2015 with the Lib Dems. But it was David Cameron, George Osborne, and the Eton Mafia, as I called them, that were running the Conservative Party. And it was amazing that all of David Cameron's friends who went to Eton and Oxford, he thought they were the best qualified to run the country. I couldn't, no, I wouldn't necessarily agree with that. Uh, and there's a bar in the Commons which members go to and probably have a drink before dinner in the members' dining room. It's called the smoking room. You can't smoke in it, but it's just called the smoking room. And you've got to imagine it's full of green Chesterfield sweets, chairs and settees, and it's all very nice. And I was sitting in there, and one of David Cameron's cronies was a guy called Hugo Swire. The Swire family made a lot of money in the Far East, and I think Hugo was the chief exec of Cathay Pacific before he became an MP. And he was from Eton and Oxford, and he was a minister. And he leant over when I was in there one time, about 6 months after I'd been elected, and said, "Most of your time with your head falls down the
It's,
toilet."
Andrew, say it again. We miss somebody put the silencer on you.
No, it's probably Hugo. Hugo, I said, "I went to the sort of school, Hugo, that if you'd have gone there, you'd have spent most of your time with your head falls down the toilet." And he said that I would have struggled at Eton. I said, "Well, my parents would have struggled um, with the school fees, I can assure you." I said, "Hugo, I went to a comprehensive school. That means I had a very comprehensive education. And it also means that my first sexual experience was A, consensual, and B, with a member of the opposite sex, unlike you. And he went apoplectic, and he stormed off, and he didn't speak to me for 2 years, and I didn't miss it.
Nice one. Oh my gosh. And because I remember when you were doing all the standing up and everything, there were a sprinkling of people with you. There's Sir Christopher Chope, and I can't remember, there was a couple of others. What
Chopey from Christchurch, yes, but I'll not forgive him because in April 2024, in my big debate in the main chamber, uh, when we had the big cheering that came through the bulletproof glass, which has never happened
that was
before.
amazing. That was
Yeah.
amazing, wasn't it? And
When Chris Chope
you-
actually said in his speech in that debate that everybody knows that the vaccines do more harm, more good than harm, more harm, more. And he knew that wasn't true, but that's what he had to say to keep the whips happy. Um, Unfortunately, that's what he did, and that's on the Hansard record. You can go and have a look at it. So um, there was a Scottish MP, and he spoke up, and he was a former um, well, he'd carried out medical testing at a university as a technician, and he spoke up at the end, but he lost his seat as well. And of course, you know, I will maintain that my vote didn't drop from 63% to 3% at the 2024 election, and that there were
Mm.
major anomalies around that election, which would say that it was election fraud. I mean, how
So
many
let's say what
how many other areas with the district council a year before the election does the whole elections department resign en masse on a Friday and get replaced by a whole new team? I mean, it just doesn't happen. How, why there's no explanation of why it took 3 times longer this time for my ballot boxes to get in uh, at that election than it has at the previous five, all the referendums we've had. Um, and of course, I do know now that the exit poll in North West Leicestershire was cancelled 2 weeks before by Ipsos Mori. Why? Why didn't they want to poll North West Leicestershire? I'll put it to you, if they had have done on polling day, the problem is that exit poll would have given a different result to the one at the count.
so sneaky, isn't it? And they did the same thing to Galway as well. I remember both of you were strong people candidates, and
Absolutely, and they,
and
they
they did have
didn't
to
they didn't
include.
poll, and mysteriously they didn't poll George Galloway's seat either.
They're
No,
not.
no,
Wow. It's crazy. And I'm going to open up. If you want to speak to Andrew and ask him direct question, just hold your hand up and I can unmute you
I
there.
can't see anybody. I can't even see myself. I don't know what I've pressed on this screen, but as long as you can see me and you're happy, we'll carry on.
We can see you. Yeah, Sunny wants to ask a question.
Hello, hi Andrew. I
Hello.
um I was really all throughout the whole of the COVID thing. I followed you right from the beginning because you sounded and you behaved as somebody who might in the beginning who might could be trusted, and that's why I kept following and following you, and it was getting, you were saying all the things that were true and correct, and you cared about people, and you weren't following those. Oh, I it was just phenomenal how everything happened, and how they treated you was outrageous. And what I wanted to ask is, how is it that they blatantly they show everybody how corrupt they are, and how is it that they actually get away with it? Why? Who is there? I don't know what kind of rules, or surely there's got to be something there for people to actually say, the leaders, to say you can't behave like this, we can't behave like this, and get away with it. And
They
how
can, they
is it
can, they
that
can,
they
they
do?
can, they can, they can get away with it because they're in a party system where the parties are corrupt. And as I say, if you want preferment, you have to do what's good for the party, not necessarily what's good for your electorate. And that was never my priority. Everyone's supposed to speak in the chamber of the House of Commons without fear or favour. Well, there's a lot of intimidation, and I was exposed to that. And you know, you get offered whatever you want if you're willing to moderate your position and do what the party wants. Well, I mean, that's not speaking without fear or favour. And it came down to I didn't go into Parliament to let them murder children if I could help it.
Yeah,
And fundamentally that's what it came down to. What I found out from lobbying my colleagues and people I thought were my friends in Parliament, who I'd worked with for 12 years, um, is they were willing to, and many of them knew.
yeah.
Many of them had actually got vaccine harms themselves or relatives, and they still wouldn't speak
And
out. And I'm not sure whether they're think
yeah,
some of them are some of them are corrupted, some of them are probably being blackmailed, and some of them were just scared. And I mean, what they did to me, the ostracizing me, the
yeah,
smearing me, the financial attacks on me. I mean, they took everything off me,
yeah.
and then they smeared me in the newspapers and cancelled me from the mainstream media with some horrendous stories that none of it's true. Uh,
Sometimes I was worried about you, Andrew. I
Oh,
was worried.
they put the first after they suspended me from the Conservative Party over those for being anti-Semitic, which is rubbish because I was quoting a paper from the Hebrew University of Jerusalem. That was
Absolutely.
laughable. I mean, they actually put us a story out saying I was going to commit suicide. That was another mind game they played on me.
I don't doubt
and
it.
and they didn't my so-called friends and colleagues. I mean, they made me eat all my meals on my own for 20 months in that
Uh,
place and wouldn't talk to me for
just
20
awful.
months.
Uh,
If it had been any other workplace, you would have had them for uh, bullying and coercion, but not in the House of Commons, of course.
yeah, no, of
But to be
course.
honest, by the time I'd found out what they were, and if they were all willing to turn a blind eye and let children be murdered, I didn't want to sit next to them anymore, to be honest.
Yeah, yeah,
I
yeah,
really didn't want them anywhere near me. And what I will tell you is that it wasn't as lonely as you think, because there are about 4,000 real people who work in Parliament, and they're the cooks and the cleaners and the security guards and the
yeah,
police and the clerks.
yeah, yeah.
And 80% of those were with me. And when there was no one else on the corridor, no MPs or anybody, I mean, the number of nights when I'd be walking out of Parliament on my own, obviously, late at night down the corridor, and one of the black cleaning ladies I didn't know and never met before, be mopping the floor, and as I walked by, I mean, she'd put her arms around me
Oh,
and say, "God bless you. We're all praying for you. Keep going."
that
Beautiful.
that is worth its weight in gold, Andrew.
And if anyone had seen her doing it, then she'd have got sacked.
Oh, thank you so much. I'm thanking you on behalf of all the people I know we were all really, really
Well, that's why they had to
rooting.
fix my election. They couldn't have me back in Parliament because the whole of the party system, where someone actually standing up for their own people and raising the concerns my constituents had about the vaccines, um, I think I did it properly. I was always polite to the ministers. Uh, but I mean, they just couldn't stand me being there because that would have blown the whole of the party system up. And that's why they did the very risky thing of engaging in election fraud. And it's not the fact that I'm not an MP anymore. I feel very hurt for all the people who come up to me, even every day in North West Leicestershire now, and say they voted for me and what happened, because they did. And their votes were taken out of the ballot boxes and other votes were put in. I mean, one of the ballot boxes, they obviously made a mistake when they were sorting one of the ballot boxes out, taking my votes out remotely and putting somebody else's in, because one of the ballot boxes came in and it got a lot more votes in it than were actually given out in the polling station. And that would take a bit of explaining of how that could possibly happen.
Terrible. I will just keep it to one question each. Thank you so much, Sunny. Sorry to cut you off there, but I'm just trying to get everyone to get a question if they want to. Kathy, if you want to ask, if just keep to one question each, everybody. So click unmute. Kathy.
Okay. Hello, Andrew. Thank you very much for everything that you do. We're very, very impressed. I was just wondering what your hopes are for the future, because you've had your parliamentary seat taken away from you, but you continue to carry on doing the campaigning that you're doing. Do you feel hopeful at all for the future? Do you have any sort of concrete plan for what you want to do moving forward?
Yes, well, I'm stuck in lawfare. I've been in lawfare for many, many years now, which is the way that the establishment tends to try and tie you up and also destroys your wealth. Um, I'm speaking at events around the country, and I'm enjoying that. That can just about keep me surviving. Um, I am. I was hoping. I will tell you that when I was expelled from the Conservative Party, not one of my friends from Parliament for 12 and a half years even contacted me. But I did get a phone call
Wow,
from I did get a phone call from a man who was a US at the time, a US presidential candidate, and that was a man called Robert Kennedy Jr.
amazing.
He rang me within an hour on my mobile and said that it was disgraceful what was being done to me, and he would back me. And I was pretty much banking on him. I'm still banking on him really to expose the truth about the vaccines in America, which will be impossible then for the mainstream media over here, which is completely corrupted. I mean, it is completely corrupted. I think it was Malcolm X that said, and I do like his quote, he said that the media has the most power in the world because it has the power to make the innocent guilty and the guilty innocent. And that's exactly what the media can do over here. So they're completely complicit in the scamdemic and the cover up of the vaccine harms and excess deaths. So they're going to hang on till the very bitter end. But if it was exposed in America, and I think it will be, I was hoping it would be before Christmas. I'm not banking on that now. But I do think, I mean, I do know Jay Bhattacharya, who's got Anthony Fauci's job now.
Yeah.
Jay's a really good guy. I mean, you know,
He was part of the Barrington Declaration,
he
wasn't
was a
he?
great Barrington Declaration original signatory. Robert Malone, who discovered the mRNA process and its problems. He's on some of the committees, and I've met some amazing people, and we're not going to stop campaigning. I've seen Malhotra. I know him very well. I know Angus Dalgleish. I know all the Pierre Corey, Steve Kirsch. I know a lot of the campaigners in America. Um, they're going to try and make us forget what they did during the pandemic, but we're not going to let them. And I'm not going
Yeah.
to let them write me out of this story like they did out of the Post Office Horizon scandal.
Wonderful,
So
wonderful, Andrew.
we've got to keep going, and people are waking up. I mean, and people are still waking up, and if we let them get away with what they've got away with so far, I guarantee you that they're going to do it again to us. And whatever happens, I want to be part
Absolutely.
of setting up a new system so that this can never happen again. Never happen again.
I'm
And
sure,
for that, it's all got to be exposed.
and I'm sure you've got enormous backing, Andrew, and for our little group here and the people who are going to be watching this, I'm sure many, many people are going to be seeing this and are supporting you behind the scenes and doing what they can to
Well, it's
support
very
you.
touching. I mean, I can't travel anywhere in the country without whichever street I'm walking on, and I can be hundreds and hundreds of miles from Leicestershire, uh, without people coming up to me and shaking my hand and saying thank you. I don't know
Fantastic.
which former politician gets that. And I can say that you can see now why former prime ministers have to have bodyguards for the rest of their lives.
Yeah, there it is. Kathy, thank you so much for your question. And Margaret, all yours. If you want to click unmute there and ask Andrew, we've got a few minutes left there. Might be able to get another question in.
We're full of admiration for what you have done. How do you feel the future is now with all this the civil service, really, they seem to be controlling so much at a
Yes,
local level. When I
yes.
have a friend who's been well into all this, in somewhere in the Wales, and she knew this was going on years ago, and she was one of 47 who voted against all the time and got nowhere. And I just can see, I can't see how it's going to change with this all these civil servants everywhere, and they seem to be in so much control.
Absolutely. I think, I'm not always a great fan of Dominic Cummings, but he's been very candid with his remarks about what happened at the cabinet meetings, and that the minutes were already and the conclusions were already written before the meeting started.
Yeah.
That any cabinet minister that didn't stick to the script written by the civil servants would be dealt with. So that shows you the pantomime that Parliament is, because it's already decided which direction. Just like the Conservative Party had set up when they were in government, the digital ID and the so-called consultation, but the consultation was, that was just a hoop that had to jump through. They'd already decided they were doing it, and it was a baton hand over to the Labour Party, who've got the majority to ram anything through Parliament. I think I'd get rid of the House of Lords. I would halve the number of MPs, but I'd double the pay because it wouldn't cost anything. So make everyone have a double-sized constituency. And I'd say no external earnings at all while or lobbying, or no lobbying allowed. Um, no whipping, because if a law's good for the country, why do I need to whip MPs to vote for it? I think you shouldn't have it. If it's good for their area, they should vote for it. It doesn't matter which party puts the legislation forward. And then I would have the public to be the second chamber. So we'd have to move on to direct democracy, Swiss hybrid model, where every 3 months the public would vote for all or against whichever bills they did or didn't like. But to have that, we'd have to have an impartial media who could allow an informed debate on all these issues. And people say, well, I'm not interested in politics. Well, when you abdicate your responsibility for politics and legislation, this is where we end up. Because you can't trust politicians because they're corruptible. And the powers that want to corrupt them are immense. I mean, you're talking about the ultimate power being with people who have the ability to create money from nothing and charge interest for it. So it'd be like me bribing people with buckets of air. It means nothing to them. And most people sadly have a price. And I will share with you that in the last 5 years, a lot of people have come to me and said, Andrew, I want to help you. Whether that was some financial help or time or resources. Half of those people have turned out to be working for the World Economic Forum who came to help me. And they ultimately betrayed me.
Wow.
That's the resources that these people have got. I mean, it's limitless. Um,
Wow.
but they are very few of them, and there are many of us. And I think people are waking up. And as you say, the civil servants, I would get rid of all the top civil servants. They are all common purpose, and there's a greater incentive to get those on board because they're there forever. They're there and they rise up through the ranks, whereas politicians are very much here today and gone tomorrow, or if not gone this afternoon. Especially when they're doing, what their paymasters want from them, because it's going to be not in the interest of the people. So they're going to be out of government pretty quickly, and that's the way it's gone now.
Mm.
And what I do know is that they used to annoy my colleagues when I said it, is that, people, need to know that in this country, I can assure you, you've got the very best politicians that money can buy.
Margaret, thank you so much for your question. And I think we just got to squeeze one more in. And Peter would like to ask a question. Andrew?
Okay.
Hello, Andrew. Firstly, I'd just like to say thank you very much for everything you're doing, because it's very, very much appreciated, I can assure you. I don't know how much time we've got here, but there's many things I'd like to ask you. But the main thing I wanted to ask you about was I'm a director of a limited company,
Right.
and
So you're talking about the digital ID and your
apps.
annual return.
Yeah, yeah, which I am just so desperate not to do that. I am looking at every avenue to see if there's a way to either delay it or not have to do it. I mean, is there any advice you could give on that at
Well,
all?
you want to, well, you need to band together. There's strength in numbers, and
Mm,
if enough company directors don't do it, it'll have to be stopped. But I mean, 2/3 of the public don't want digital ID. They
yeah,
are going to try and bring it in through the back door. They've got 11 million digital IDs already. When people didn't realize, they logged on through the one login system that you'll be forced to go in through
yeah,
to do your annual return. They've already got 11 million people who already. And
right.
of course, they're trying to bring it in for children as well, so they'll catch all those and bring those into the system. Um, this is the hill that we've got to die on. I asked Grok a week or so ago, about digital ID, and they said, it is totalitarian control, and if once we're in it, there will be no way out of it. And
No,
you'd have to trust the government with your data not to abuse it and to use it as a control mechanism. And every piece of legislation that governments ever bring in is always exploited to the maximum use of their powers. So they won't do that. They're bound to exploit it to the maximum of power they can use over you. And of course, it's going to be a Chinese social credit scoring system in no time at all, linked to your bank account. And they need the digital ID in before they crash the banks and move us over to central bank digital currency. And then basically we're on the Chinese model. I mean, they don't really hide it. I mean, the model they've got for humanity around the world is basically the Chinese model, where the people have got 99% of the people plus have got communism and are completely controlled, and 1% are extremely, extremely wealthy. Um, that's where they want us. And the fact that most people are waking up now has made them more determined to try and get that control measure on us as soon as possible. There's two things we've got to do to win. We've got to stop, not have digital ID, and we've got to keep the UK, hopefully Europe, out of a major war with Russia, China, or anybody else they'd like to get us into. If we can do that, we by the time the truth will come out, and we can win. Um, but unfortunately, the people we're up against, they know that as well, and they're working very, very hard against us, which is why you're seeing the pace of the announcements increasing and increasing.
Well, Andrew, this is
But what a time to be alive! I
gosh,
mean, real
what a time
thing.
live.
I mean, you know, the Chinese
Absolutely.
do say, live in interesting times. Well, I mean, we have got a chance because enough
We've got a
people,
chance.
we've got a chance. And it's probably not a brilliant chance, but it's probably the best chance we're ever going to get. And it's probably the best chance humanity's ever going to get. And on the turn of the cards over the next 12 months, the future of humanity will be decided. And we can play our part in that. And I hope that when the time to stand up comes, that the people will stand.
That's it. It's critical, isn't it? And thank you so much, Andrew, for what you're doing. And clearly, I mean, even though the devil's on us and all this scallywagging
Well,
shenanigans,
we're seeing people for what they really are, though, aren't we? I mean, everything
yeah,
that is unseen is being seen. I think
yeah,
I think
exactly.
it's an amazing time. I mean, for the last 5 years, it's felt to me like I'm living in a nightmare that never ends. Um,
Mm.
and
And Sarah says, I'm so grateful to you for everything you've helped me and the public on, and for being true and honest about the country's politics now, in the past and in the future. Bless your heart. Keep well and see you soon. Oh, sorry, that's from Sunny. That's from Sunny. And Andrew, it's just amazing what you're really a light, a beacon of light. And right from the beginning, since you came into my radar, I've just seen a proper man stand up. And I think that it must stimulate other men to kind of, and people, other people. It certainly has, isn't it? People are shaking your hand all over the country. And
well, we're moving into the last chapter of the book, and I don't know what the last chapter holds for us, but I know what's on the last page, and I think God wins. And I don't
absolutely,
think he's got us all this way to let us down. think we're going to be all right.
Absolutely. And
But
look what
we,
you did for the little ones. You stopped it. You did it. And then the Together movement and the other people, they stopped the jabbing of the NHS staff. Something changed, something happened, and you did it. You did that. I was so grateful when that
well,
happened.
and who in their life gets a chance to do something like that? It's just unbelievable opportunity. And I don't
Amazing. And
regret, and as painful at times as it has been, and continues to be, they're not giving me an easy time. Um, I don't regret it. And I've met some amazing people. I've seen who my friends really are, and they weren't who I thought. And the world wasn't how I thought it was either. But
mm,
it's best, it's always best, I always thought. I'd rather live in an unpalatable truth than a comfortable lie.
there it is. It's being true to your soul, isn't it? As you said. And Rose says, great podcast, stood strong even through though it was hard to watch in lockdown what was going on. And Margaret says, bless you, Andrew. And Peter says, thank you, Andrew. I agree. Thank you so much, Andrew, for your words of wisdom and inspiration and
Yeah.
your
Thank you.
demonstration of power and strength and standing your ground against standing up for what's right, against standing up against the darkness. Thank you so much, Andrew.
Thank you for
Thank you.
inviting me on, and God bless.
You're welcome. And please, wherever you're watching this replay, click like and subscribe and share it, because the more that people can see this, the more we can all stand up and be inspired by Andrew's demonstration of how to do it. He's lost so much, but you're standing like a shining light and inspiring people. So please like and subscribe and share. And you'll find the replay for Andrew's podcast is going to be on my website, painfreedom.co.uk. It'll be there by tomorrow, so you can have a look all over again. And I'll be putting links to how to support Andrew through Twitter, through Facebook. Anything else you want me to share for you, Andrew? How to people to get into
Well, I mean,
contact with
I do publicise when I'm giving talks around the country. I think I'm in Totnes on the 14th of November, and I've got 3 dates in Spitalfields in London at the end of the month as well. If anyone wanted to come along and support those events, it'd be very, very welcome.
I do recommend it. It's and if you have any doubts about Andrew, if you do think he's controlled opposition or something, I mean, hopefully you're listening to your heart now. But I know when I saw his speech the other day at Hope, I felt, true, 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 straight through to the heart, and it was a very emotive speech as well. So do go along to Andrew's talks and make your own mind up, and you'll know. Andrew, thank you so, so much for your time. I know you're a very busy man, and I always like to leave my guests with the last word. So, how would you like to leave people going off into the night? And
It seems very dark at the moment, and it's probably going to get darker. But it's always darkest before dawn, and the darker it gets, the nearer we are to the end. And I've got faith in humanity. I think we're going to pull through this, and when it's over, and it will be over, we're going to be able to build a better society than we've had before. It's an opportunity. We're going to have a great reset, but it's not the one they wanted. I promise you.
perfect. Thank you so much, Andrew. Lots of love, and thank you so much for what you're doing. Thank you, everybody, for joining us tonight. And Chris also says, in the end, God wins. Thank you, Chisholm, too. Thank you, everybody. Have a wonderful evening.